In this video, we'll be covering this part of Edit Mode's Face menu. We'll start with a brief review of the three extrude methods and the inset operation, all of which are covered in more detail in previous videos. The remaining options are new, and we'll see how to use poke and triangulate, as well as how to merge tris into quads and how to solidify faces. Extrude faces. With a single face selected, extrude faces extrudes the face along the direction of its face normal. If more than one face is selected, then they extrude along the average of their face normals. For a full explanation of all the extrusion options, including the next two options in this menu, see Video 42. Extrude faces along normals extrudes each selected face along its own face normal. Notice that as the faces extend, they stay connected by changing their size. Extrude individual faces. Again, each face extrudes along its own face normal, but this time the face size is unchanged, so that the extrusion creates a gap between what were originally joined faces. Inset faces creates an inset on the selected faces. For a full explanation of the options and the parameters of the last op panel, see Video 43. Poke faces. This is the first of the new options that have not been covered elsewhere. This command splits the selected face by adding a new central vertex with a set of faces radiating from it. The number of faces depends on the number of vertices on the perimeter of the selected face. In the last op panel, poke offset allows us to raise or lower that central vertex along the direction of the selected face's normal. Offset relative, if activated, creates an offset multiplier based on the size of the original selected face. Poke center can be used to adjust the position of the newly created central vertex. There are three options available. Weighted median. This option adds the length of the two edges connected to each vertex in the selected face, and uses this as a multiplying factor for the coordinates of that vertex. This is done for each vertex on the face perimeter before averaging those coordinates to determine the position of the new central vertex. Median is simply the average of the coordinates of the vertices on the selected face. Bounds is the center of the smallest bounding box, which encloses the vertices of the selected face. Of course, we are free to move the vertex to any position we want after the poke faces operation is complete. Triangulate faces splits the selected faces into tris. Selected faces that are already tris are unaffected. In the last op panel, we can control how both quads and n-gons are to be split into tris. Quad method has its value selected from a drop-down list. Beauty. This attempts to split the quads in such a way as to create tris that keep the internal angles of the tris as large as possible in order to avoid tris with very short edges. Of course, the new tris have to connect to the existing vertices, so there are only two ways of creating those tris in any case. Fixed creates the tris by connecting vertices 1 and 3 of the original quad. Fixed alternative connects vertices 2 and 4. Shortest diagonal connects the two vertices that create the shortest new edge. Longest diagonal connects the two vertices that create the longest new edge. N-gon method has only two options. Beauty, using the same approach as described for quad method, avoiding tris with short edges where possible. Clip. In essence, this method continually clips tris off the perimeter of the original face until only tris remain. There is also a triangulate modifier, which we'll describe here since it is almost identical to the option in the face menu. When we add a triangulate modifier to an object, we get the same options as before for splitting quads and n-gons, but there are two additional fields. Minimum vertices allows us to specify the minimum number of vertices on a face before it can be split up. For example, if we enter 5 in this field, all quads would remain unaffected. Keep Normals when selected requests Blender to maintain any custom split normals that may exist. This may not always be possible, but using Fixed when triangulating quads has the best chance of success. The final thing to remember is that we won't see the newly created faces until we apply the modifier. At that point, the faces can be seen when we're in edit mode. Returning to the face menu. Triangles to quads. Attempts to join pairs of adjacent tris in the selected area into a single quad. It is possible that not all tris will be merged into quads. Blender will not perform any merge that would create a non-viable quad. This command has a large set of options in its last op panel. Max Face Angle specifies the maximum angle between the face normals of tris allowed for a merger to take place. Max Shape Angle controls the maximum angle allowed in the resulting quads. If this is set to 0, only tris that merge to form perfect rectangles will be created. The value given here specifies how much the angle can deviate from 90 degrees. So, using the default 40, angles within the new quad can range from 50 degrees to 130 degrees. That is from 90-40 to 90+40. Topology influence adjusts the logic Blender uses when merging tris. With a low value here, Max Shape Angle takes priority, and Blender merges tris so that the resulting quads are as close to rectangles as possible, even when this does not create the best geometry possible. On the other hand, when this field has a high value, Blender prioritizes a result that creates a cleaner geometry. In the simple mesh shown here, we won't see any change as we adjust this value. The Blender manual suggests that the best results are obtained when topology influence is between 1 and 1.4 and max shape angle is 90. The remaining entries in the last op panel are all checkboxes. For all but the last of these, if any are selected, they stop merges where certain conditions hold. Compare UVs. Don't merge tris that are not adjacent for UV mapping. Compare color attributes. Do not merge tris that have different color attributes. Compare seam. Don't merge tris that share an edge marked as a seam. Compare sharp. Don't merge tris that share an edge marked as sharp. Compare materials. Don't merge tris that are assigned different materials. Deselect joined. Deselect the newly formed quads. This can be useful if we need to see which of the originally selected faces remain unchanged. Solidify faces. This option is some ways similar to extrusion, since it adds a third dimension to flat faces, giving them a thickness. For example, let's say we want to turn this hemisphere into a bowl. At the moment, it lacks realism since the shape has no thickness. But if we select all the faces and choose Solidify Faces, we get the effect we require, which is enhance even more using Shade Auto Smooth. The last op panel offers one parameter allowing us to set the thickness created. Positive values create an inner thickness, while negative value create an outer thickness. There is also a Solidify modifier, and although this does the same job as the one in the face menu, the modifier offers a lot more parameters, giving us greater control over the result. We'll be looking at that modifier in the next video.